But there's another interesting result of the GOP midterm, which is that now there is a clear schism that is happening, and it's dividing the GOP because Trump now is, it's clear he's going to run in 2024. And it didn't take him but a couple days to start taking shots at everybody he thinks might run against him. This means Ron DeSantis. This means Glenn Youngkin. He's taking shots at all of them. In case you thought this was going to be some sort of friendly primary, let me disabuse you of that notion, because it's not. It's going to be a street fight. It's going to be, as they say, I don't know who coined the term, but somebody said politics was like a knife fight in a phone booth. And I think that that's a very apt description of it. That's exactly what it's going to be like.
Oh,
and it's happening. It's already happening. I mean, the primaries are sooner than you think. And we all know Trump is running, and there's still people who say that DeSantis is not running, but we all know he's actually going to run. Let's just be realistic about it. Trump called him Ron DeSanctimonious just earlier today. He released this screed where he said,
which makes no sense, right? What?
Well, what is sanctimonious about him? Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Here's how it makes sense. The word sanctimonious rhymes with DeSantis. Therefore, it makes sense. He's calling Ron DeSantis just an average governor. He's doing the Trump thing, but he's doing the DeSantis now, right? Everyone can understand what that means.
Scott Adams had a theory on this, which is basically, I think that Trump was essentially firing a warning shot. In other words, like he knows that the sanctimonious isn't necessarily an insult, but the point is that,
he's telling him not to run. Well, Ron DeSantis will do whatever he wants to do. He's not going to obey like a child, obviously. People are choosing sides. I know shit happens fast. You know what this is like? Did you ever watch Game of Thrones? It's a shitty show for most of its run, but did you ever watch it?
No.
Okay, so in Game of Thrones, what happens? People are jostling and competing, and towards the end, people are cooperating to defeat the zombies or the undead. But then as soon as that happens, they split again, and then they all start competing with each other. This is what's happening in the Republican Party. They can cooperate enough, but as soon as that contest is over, it's time for us to fight amongst ourselves, because we're looking forward to the next contest, which is the primary. And that is exactly what's happening right now. People are taking sides. You see Candace Owens, she released a video about how Trump was sort of unhinged and got angry at her, and she's clearly on Team DeSantis. You see Tim Pool he's pretty much breaking for DeSantis, even though in a video we're going to link, he still makes excuses for Trump. Like, for instance, Tim said, oh, Trump's not really insulting DeSantis with all this stuff. Like, well, he is, but it's clear that he has to sort of placate Tim's crowd, his audience, right? Very pro-Trump. But he's breaking towards DeSantis.
Is
Officer Tatum really is breaking towards DeSantis, I think is really obvious.
Is Tim's crowd really that pro-Trump?
I think they're super pro-Trump. Just read the comments the next time you're in a Tim thing. All the more moderate Republicans, of course, are breaking towards DeSantis. I would assume that most of the big money is breaking towards DeSantis. And I personally am 100% breaking towards DeSantis because I want to win the next election.
Yeah.
Okay?
Me too.
I mean, yes, I love the way that Trump triggers people. I love the memes, whatever. But triggering and memes and all of that, none of it helps if you lose an election. And I know that the diehard Trumpers will say, well, what about 2016? You doubted him then. And like, true. And he defied expectations, true. But you're ignoring that there was a 2020 election, which, by the way, I don't think was stolen. He got less votes. Even if he didn't get less votes strategically in certain places, overall, he definitely got less votes. You're ignoring that performance as well. And you're ignoring that happened against the guy he's probably going to run against again, who was a crappy candidate. So he ran and got less votes against a crappy candidate, a guy who didn't leave his basement, guys. And that tells me that he's poisoned at this point. I mean, there's just too much. There's too much. He galvanizes the other side just way too much. Just sort of like Clinton did with the Republicans. She galvanized them because she has a long history of Republicans hating her. Whereas someone like Obama didn't have such a long history. He just came on the scene and said some stuff, and he was a good speaker, and okay, not too bad. And just a few percentage points here and there is all you need to win an election. Trump doesn't have that anymore, but DeSantis could still have that. And based on what he did, I think he does have that. Now, here's some concrete evidence that I'm pointing to that indicates that DeSantis is the future and Trump is the past. Here's what I would say. Remember that Trump did the whole Ron DeSanctimonious stuff just a couple days before the election. Well, here's another thing. If you looked at the polls in Florida a couple days before the election, DeSantis was running about 10 to 12 points ahead of his opponent, Chris. What did he win by?
It's like 20 or something.
20 points. And you can say, well, the polls were just super wrong, I suppose. Like, that could be it. There could be a lot of things that go into why polls diverge greatly from actual result. I think that he was actually helped by Trump taking a shot at him, because this sort of let people know that, okay, Ron DeSantis is no longer just a mini Trump. He's not just Trump's guy or whatever, because here's Trump insulting him. They're clearly two different people at this point. Them being two different people actually helped him. All the people who are closely tied to Trump, all the people who were on board with trying to relitigate 2020 along with Trump, they underperformed their polls. DeSantis overperformed his polls by 7 points, which is way above the margin of error even. That is a significant difference. That's not just polls are wrong sometimes. No, I think polls moved in this case. They weren't just wrong. They actually moved from, I think the polling was pretty accurate when it was taken, but then Trump said DeSanctimonious. He made it clear that these two men are separated now, and that actually helped DeSantis, and he pulled way more votes. He went to 20% margin of victory. And if you're an intelligent person, this is a clear sign that he can win in 2024, and Trump cannot. And if you're just going by who can win and who can't, then he's the choice. And if you're going by who's willing to stand up for our values, then DeSantis is still the choice. Why is he not the choice? What has he done? I know that now that Trump has clearly taken shots at him, and he's, now DeSantis is the enemy. Trump's most ardent followers will say, DeSantis is a rhino. Well, DeSantis is supported by guys like McConnell or whatever, so we're suspicious of him suddenly. But were you saying that when DeSantis was doing actual legislation against woke teachers? He was actually making fundamental changes. Were you doing that when he opened up his state? And keep in mind, when he opened up his state, there were a lot of people saying he was killing people, you're wrong. And, the science was hazy. It wasn't really sure if he was even doing the right thing, but he did it anyway. He was on the side of freedom.
Yeah.
He stuck his neck out. Right. And
that was a leadership.
Right. And at that same time, what was Trump saying? He was saying, take the vax, he was pro-vax because, what happened on his watch, or, it was an ego boost to him that the vax, it was developed quickly on his watch. He was still pro-vax at that time. And DeSantis was actually putting his neck on the line, doing things, making his state open. That's not talk. That's actual doing. And who knows? I mean, he did it, and maybe what if he did it and then a ton of people died, like way more people than in California? Well, that would be on DeSantis then. If he did that, he made that choice, and way more people died, that would be on his head. And yet he did it anyway. He was still on the side of freedom. So how is he not a populist governor? How is he not anti-woke? How is he not on the right side of the culture war? He's not people just want to call him a rhino because McConnell supports him. McConnell supports him because he just wants a Republican president. That's why he supports. He's just going with who he thinks he can win. Just because a rhino supports you doesn't mean, and I'm not even calling McConnell a rhino. I think that's just such a hazy, stupid term. But he probably just wants a winner. And he's identified DeSantis as a winner. And the money is going to flow towards him because the money, the big money, identifies him as a winner. And I think you should too. And I think that this doesn't have to mean, if you're pro-Trump, and I know you were more pro-Trump than I was, it doesn't mean you have to, it does mean you have to abandon him, because it means you have to support somebody else. But it doesn't mean you have to ignore the good things that Trump did. the triggering he did, right? The fights that he picked. It doesn't mean you have to pretend like that didn't happen. It just means that you acknowledge that in the best interest of the country and the best interest of the party and the best interest of myself, we have to look forward. And I'm sorry, even if you're a diehard Trump supporter, you have to admit that he's not a forward-looking person right now. Because if you're still talking about 2020, you're not looking forward. That's literally in the past.
Yeah.
Relitigating 2020 is not going to make you president right now, and it's not going to win you 2024. So how is that not looking in towards the past? We need to look towards the future. We need to map a vision for the future, and we need to elect people who are forward-looking. That's all there is to it. And I think that you're seeing a lot of people like Officer Tatum, like Candace Owens, like Tim Pool. And I think it's hilarious that I'm naming a bunch of YouTubers, but these are important, these are tastemakers at this point. This is our media.
On the right.
Yeah, these are not irrelevant voices. They're lining up behind DeSantis because this is the way forward. If you want to live in 2020 or 2016, go ahead. Cernovich is another person who's clearly aligned with DeSantis now. You just have to, well, you don't have to, but you should consider the future and the good of the party. And I know a lot of people say, well, this is not my party. Like, okay, fine. Do you want the Democrats to control everything? Is that your party? Is that what it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory if you're going to go down that road, right? Wouldn't you rather have 70% of what you want as opposed to 0% with some dream of 100%? That's the case I would make towards you. And it's clear that this schism is happening. And it's just like the end of Game of Thrones. Everybody's done fighting the big bad, in this case, Democrats. But it's time for us to sort out who fights the next battle, who represents us going forward.
So, I am pro-Trump, but, I would definitely take DeSantis way over Trump. I mean, I voted for Trump in 2016, but honestly, I didn't really follow politics back then.
Well, why did you vote for him then? If people don't follow politics, usually they vote against him.
It was more just for amusement.
Oh.
I would say. But, I mostly, I voted for him in 2020, and it's mostly, I have to admit, it's based on my perception of him that he cares a lot about the United States, and that, basically he loves his country, and he obviously demonstrated he was willing to work very hard. But now seeing what he's been, these truths that he's been putting out, it actually has made me reevaluate him, and I can see all the negative, traits that the leftists always,
right. That is
for.
self. That must be painful for you. Yeah,
it is a little bit painful.
Right.
Yeah, but I have to admit, I think, especially the narcissism is pretty extreme. I mean, he could be.
Yeah.
He could be a god just by changing a few small things, in my opinion. But then he wouldn't be Trump.
No, he wouldn't. You just have to let crazy geniuses be what they want to be. But here's the thing. Yeah, that must be painful for you to admit that the left was right about some things about him. Even when I supported him, though, I never disagreed with this notion that the left proposed, which is that he's a narcissist and he cares way more about himself than anybody else. I always felt that way. I never was under any illusion that he cared more about me or America than he did about himself. If his
Candace, him turning on Candace actually is a pretty big data point.
It is, because it's just like, if it hurts my ego, then you're the enemy now.
Yeah.
That's really how he operates, because it is about himself. I was never under the illusion that he wasn't just about himself. I only supported him insofar as, well, if whatever your interests are right now align with my interests, then that's fine. We can be allies. But I was never under the illusion that he was some sort of patriot, or that, I mean, I think he loves America, but I think he just loves himself so much more.
That's interesting, yeah.
And the left was right about that. But I never argued with them on that point. But for people who thought that maybe that wasn't the case, it must be painful to see that now. Yeah, I think maybe that's the case, because it when he's attacking a Ron DeSantis, when he's attacking Candace Owens, people who have clearly been on his side, it's clear that his ego is more important than
Yeah.
either the GOP, either the health of the country, either fighting against woke politics or fighting against, the stuff that DeSantis has been fighting against, like drag queen shows and stuff like that.
So
He's more important in his mind than all of these fights.
Tim has brought up this notion of 4D chess a few
No, no,
times,
no, that's
especially
bullshit.
recently,
There's no
right?
4D
Yeah,
chess.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to put it out there because
Okay, do
yeah,
you
in
want to
essence,
describe this crazy theory? I'm done with
well,
Tim. I'm done with Tim. After his whole I had to listen to Tim talk about a blood moon thing, like running up to the election. Oh, by the way, that's when I knew in my gut that the Republicans would underperform. When Tim was talking about how because there's a blood moon, that there would be a red tsunami or something. What does a blood moon have anything to do with how a vote is going to turn out?
yeah.
And he would ask an open-ended question about how likely is it that on Trump's birthday, oh, they said Trump's birthday happened on a blood moon as well in 1940, whatever. And then I just thought, in 1940, whatever, red didn't even stand for Republicans necessarily. It was not always blue as Democrat and Republicans are red. You know that, right? That's kind of that only started like in the 80s or something.
Oh, I
So,
didn't know.
oh yeah, so that's irrelevant. Who cares if his birthday was on? It's just all nonsense. It's just all pandering to his rabid Trump base, talking about Trump being born on a blood moon and this
I
election is
honestly,
happening on
yeah,
a
I
blood
did.
moon.
Why does Tim have so many diehard Trumpers following? I didn't really associate.
Why?
I just thought Tim was kind of anti-left, but I didn't necessarily think his audience was so
I don't
pro-Trump.
know. They're just there, and he caters to them.
Yeah.
That might be
Well,
why he talks about civil war all the time,
yeah. Yeah. So
right?
the 4D the 4D chess thing is just basically whatever Trump does or likes, the media always goes in the opposite direction, right?
Right.
So I guess the 4D chess in this case would be, if Trump doesn't like DeSantis,
Then
then
the
somehow
media will like DeSantis.
yeah,
And
that
then Tim
forces the
says
media.
when Trump steps aside and lets DeSantis take over, then the media can't backtrack and say DeSantis is a fascist or something. Well, first
Yeah.
of all, Trump is not playing 4D chess. He doesn't think that far ahead. Okay, I'm sorry, he doesn't. Okay, he just doesn't. And you only need to look at his tweets to understand that that's the case. And number two, the press can totally just backtrack instantly and turn on the dime and say, well, we were for DeSantis during his primary against Trump, but now he is a literal fascist.
Yep. Yep.
People have short memories. The press they are without shame. They will say one thing and then say the opposite thing the next day, and they can get away with it because they control it.
I got another question for you.
How long did it take for them to turn on Tulsi Gabbard or
Oh,
Elon
that's
or
true.
Elon Musk?
Yeah. 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 Both were very short.
Elon Musk was a boy genius saving the environment and
Yep.
making electric cars and reducing our carbon footprint. And he was an Obama voter. He was a leading light, an intellectual. Now what is he? A literal fascist. Right? What is Tulsi Gabbard? A literal fascist. Because she tore down the establishment pick, Kamala Harris. It was that day that she became a literal fascist, by the way. And she remained a Democrat for a long time afterwards. But she was immediately a fascist, according to the mainstream media. Right? She was a Russian asset. Wasn't she a Russian asset as soon as she tore down Kamala Harris? Yeah. Before that, she was a up and comer in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, so how do Trump supporters typically break on the vaccine? Do you know?
They're very anti-vax, and yet
So,
there's just this
yeah,
blind spot where they forgive the God Emperor for being super pro-vax. They just think that, well, I don't know what excuses they make for him. They just think, well, he's naturally proud of it because it came under his watch. Like, but words are words. If he says something, he's accountable for that thing.
yeah, it is weird that seems to be a major blind spot.
Yeah, we just have to understand. And here's another thing I want to mention. We're only in this Senate fucking mess because of Trump. Never forget, we lost the Georgia runoffs in 2020 because he went to Georgia and just talked about his campaign and his race.
Mhm. Yeah.
He wasn't addressing anything people in Georgia wanted to hear, and Republicans lost those Senate seats.
Mm.
We wouldn't even have to deal with Warnock today if he had done the right thing and just sucked it up. But you know what? He couldn't, because in his mind, he's more important than Georgia. In his mind, he's more important than the Republican balance in the Senate. So he'll go to Georgia and just talk about how he was robbed. Okay? That's what he'll talk about, you
How
know?
do yeah. So I remember you were pretty positive on Carrie Lake, and you know, basically saying she's potential president.
Yeah, because
Um,
she's
d
articulate, charismatic. She's a really good candidate.
yeah. Does sort of do recent events change your mind at
No,
all
they
on that?
don't change my mind, but they do reinforce what I think about how he's been an albatross for certain candidates, because she was very pro Trump and she has made comments about relitigating 2020. And I don't necessarily blame her, because keep in mind she's a political newcomer, so the sort of the way she got into this game, she's not an establishment Republican, but the only way she could get into it was being a Trumper, right?
Hmm.
He's the one that got her into the game, got her a seat at the table. She can only play because he got her in. So I don't blame her. But when it came to the actual election, she's running behind her polling.
Hmm.
And I really believe that that is because he is an albatross around her neck. Now, a necessary albatross, because she wouldn't even be in the game without him. However, an albatross nonetheless. She
Hmm.
ran against an inferior candidate who was afraid to debate. Why? Because, well, I mean, it's simple. If you ever hear Carrie Lake talk, it's clear that she would destroy anybody in a debate. You look like an idiot. It was smart, actually. It was smart not to debate her, and yet still cowardly, but smart. You know, it's probably what
Do you
brain
think
damage should have done, just not debate. Well, he won
do you
anyway.
think do you think Carrie Lake is smart and or brave enough to change course on
Yeah,
you know,
I
certain.
do. I do, because I don't think she's actually a Trumper. Here's the evidence. When you go on Twitter and anytime Carrie Lake is mentioned, somebody always posts this tweet that she made in 2016 where she says something like, "Oh, congratulations, fat America! You have a fat president now to represent you." She's talking about Trump, right? She clearly didn't love Trump in 2016. I mean, the
That
tweet the,
sounds black pilled.
the tweet doesn't lie. I'm not mad at her for that, because yeah, he is fat, and yeah, I it's good to call out fat people. America's too fat, so and that actually gives her bonus points in my mind. But it it indicates that she's not some sort of Trump acolyte. She jumped on the Trump train to get into politics and to get a standing prominent enough to run for governor. But after this year, let's say she loses or she wins, doesn't even matter which, and let's say Trump loses to DeSantis, that will be the end of him in politics. She has no reason to. She has her name already. People have experienced her. They know that she's articulate and confident and capable. They have their understanding of her already. She doesn't need to be tied to Trump anymore. She could just dump him. And she will, because she only latched on to him to get a footing. Remember, she was like a TV personality. She had no history in politics, so she couldn't just. She probably couldn't just say, "Hey, I'm running for governor." She needed some kind of political endorsement, and that was from Trump. But now she doesn't
Yeah,
need that shit.
I was probably going to touch on this a bit later, but you know, she has been sort of I don't know what her exact words on this were, but she's basically been hinting at fraud going on in Arizona, right?
She
Which
has, but she's a lot more
to
careful about it
me,
than Trump is.
okay, yeah, because to me that's a pretty big turnoff. Like unless you have some hard evidence
She only hints at it,
spouting
though.
that.
She doesn't say it outright. And if she loses the election, will she continue to talk about it for 2 more years? That's the other big difference.
Hmm.
If you continue to talk about it for 2 more years, then you're making the same mistake Trump did. But if you don't and you just move forward and talk about
Hmm.
the next election, then you have not made that mistake. And from what I have heard, she has not outright said that there's fraud. She's just said something like, "Well, it's clear there's at least some kind of incompetence going on in our state, and that needs to be fixed." Which it's not it's hard to disagree with, right? Like why is it in your state the vote always takes so long? Wouldn't it be better if you were more efficient? That's a fair argument,
Yeah,
you
yeah, for
know?
sure. I mean, it seems whatever is going on in Arizona, it seems like there's something that needs to be changed. I mean, it may not be incompetence, maybe that they're just bogged down with ridiculous
It could
rules
be
that
that
they
too.
came up
It could
with
be that too.
themselves,
Right.
right? But clearly, something needs to change, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a fair argument to say, why is our state so inefficient or incompetent or whatever? That's a far
Yeah.
cry, though, from saying, you cheated. Election was stolen from me. She hasn't said that, which is smart. And she's smarter than Trump. So that's why she hasn't said that. You know, there's no
Hmm.
evidence of that. So it's not something you should say. But there is evidence that your state's really bad at counting votes. So somebody should fix that.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fair statement to make. And I don't think anybody could, well, not, you could hang the whole sour grapes thing on her for it, but it's not easy because she didn't technically say the election was stolen,
Hmm.
which matters. What you technically say does matter.
Hmm.
But win or lose, I have no doubt that this is not the last you'll see of her. She's a good candidate. She'll just win the next election when Trump is sort of a more distant influence. That's what will happen.
Hmm. I got one last question around the schism, which is, again, this is coming from someone who hasn't really followed politics at all. But are these sort of schisms common? Or would you say this is more extreme than typical between Trump and DeSantis?
It's common. I mean, this is why you have primaries.
Okay.
It's very common. Go back to 2008. I mean, it was split right down the middle between Obama and Clinton.
Hmm.
Now, is it common for one
I can't
candidate to be
actually
so
believe.
abrasive against
What?
another candidate? No, it's not. That's purely a Trump thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you notice how DeSantis and Youngkin haven't even responded to him because they're more, you know, the typical politicians. They're not gonna. I don't know if that's the right. I think that's the right thing because right now DeSantis just looks bigger than him.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It feels it's really not even worth responding to.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, when you're leading on the scoreboard, you don't need to. That's the thing. It's just like sports. When you're winning on the scoreboard, you don't have to talk. And in fact, when you're winning on the scoreboard, sometimes people will just point at the scoreboard, like if they have to respond to somebody, right? This happens in sports. People will just point at the scoreboard because that says it all. I'm winning and you're losing. Trump won this quote unquote purple state by 3 points. DeSantis just won it by 20 points.
And Trump actually called him out on that, right? Saying how
He
he
said
got
his
more votes when he was running for president,
Well, but
which
that's
is
because more votes happen in the presidential
yeah,
election.
exactly, yeah.
That's ridiculous. Of course, more votes are cast in a presidential election. But that
Yeah.
just goes to show, how he's just grasping here. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I hope Trump can
It's
continue to trigger the left from not from the president's office.
no, but he is going to. But here's the other thing that I will warn against, because we have established that his ego is bigger than anything else. He has more concern for his own ego than he has for the party. Which, keep in mind, he wasn't even always in this party. Okay, he was a Democrat for much of his life. It's bigger than the country. I think so. I think lots of people disagree, but I just personally think it's bigger than his concern for the country. Not saying he's not concerned for the country. I would not be surprised if Trump loses to DeSantis in the primary. And this is nightmare scenario, but I would not be surprised if Trump runs as a third party, which means that Biden is your next president.
Oof,
And
oof.
if that happens, I would hope at least at that point, everybody who's a Trumper or whatever would finally divorce themselves from him because he just gave it to Biden again.
Oof.
That's what would happen, of course, right?
Oh my God.
In fact, if I had some advice to you right now, because Biden is such an
Put
underdog
money
to
on
be
put money on
reelected, put
Biden.
money on Biden right now because I think the odds are better for him than because I don't think that the odds makers are factoring this possibility in. They're just factoring in Biden versus Trump or Biden versus DeSantis. In
Yeah.
which case he's kind of an underdog. He's a big underdog against DeSantis, and I think he's probably a coin flip against Trump. I don't think that that's the real situation, though. I think the situation has to factor in the very real possibility that Trump runs third party, in which case Biden is a big favorite to be reelected president. Put money on it. Hey, put money on it. And I would still put money on it either way because that's what I do. I always put money on the candidate that I don't want to win as, to sort of like solve my wounds, to sort of ameliorate the pain when, in which case that they do win. So I've always put money on the candidate that I don't want to win. But in this case, you're getting good numbers too. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but when Gavin Newsom Gavin Newsom was like 200-1 for the presidency, this was only like last year or something. I put $100 on him. So yeah, I could win a ton of money if Gavin Newsom. I'm still not hoping that he becomes president, but if he does, then I'm getting quite a bit of money. I would have put more on him, but usually these political prop bets, they cap how much you can bet at a pretty small amount. Okay, so we're going to keep talking about that going forward, but there's a clear schism. If you're a Republican, you need to take a side, and it seems like they want you to take a side right now. It's sooner than you think. The New York Post has taken a side. They're on DeSantis. Basically, everybody you'll read is going to be Team DeSantis, and the smart money and the big money is going to be behind DeSantis.
Oh,
it's just the diehards. But I think more people in the Republican Party are still for Trump. They just have to learn why this is not the way going forward.
Yeah, did you listen to Milo Yiannopoulos on Timcast?
Yeah, I did. And Milo is super pro-Trump, but the thing is, Milo, he's more relevant with Trump in office. His sort of firebrand, he hitched his wagon to Trump. He's more relevant with Trump in office.
But did he give any good arguments for Trump?
No, he just sort of leaned on the cult of personality, how Trump would just destroy DeSantis because the weight of his personality and this guy is boring. Yeah, it's like DeSantis is boring. He's kind of like plain toast or something like that, and Trump will just bury him with the name calling and this and that, and like just doing the 2015 playbook over again. And although there's some argument to suggest that's true, namely what happened in 2015, what Trump did to all of his competitors in 2015. But then there's also an argument as to why that is not true. Namely, he lost an election against a man with dementia who didn't leave his basement. Why did the name calling not work? Why did the force of personality not work? Why did the charisma not work in the most recent data point that we have?
Yeah, man. Okay, on the one hand, I do think if there was a less polarizing candidate, they would have won. But you also can't deny that Biden had a lot of assistance.
He did, namely the whole suppressing Hunter Biden's laptop.
Yeah.
True, but here's the thing, though. Why? Oh, wait. I was going to say, why are we to believe that that's not going to happen in the future? We know why, because of God Emperor Musk. He has bought Twitter, and if there's another Hunter Biden laptop situation, I'm confident that I can post about it all day. So that's good. But still, he lost. He's a polarizing figure. We can argue about how these different things factored into his loss, but I don't think that we can just say, well, he'll beat a boring guy like DeSantis. Like, he didn't beat a boring guy with dementia who didn't leave his basement.
Is actually boring?
Yeah, I do. I think it's pretty boring.
Okay, I haven't actually listened to him speak for.
I mean, I think he's a very good politician, but he's not charismatic. He's not like a Trump. He's not like a Carrie Lake. He just he talks.
Yeah, you
he talks in a very but he's
tall.
A very good politician, though. He's a very good politician, and I will point out this. For a long time, based just on because I didn't pay attention really where he's from or what he's about. I just knew he was the governor of Florida. That's it. He sounds very plain. He sounds like an everyman. He uses very plain, direct language, and he just sounds kind of like he could be. This is not an insult. He could be your plumber. He could be your contractor who's remodeling your house. That's the way
he has really good pedigree, right?
But he has really good pedigree, which leads me to believe he's smart as a fox, right? Because this guy, he's not your contractor. He's not your plumber. He graduated from Harvard Law. Okay? He's not that type of person.
Back when it probably wasn't as woke as it is.
Even if it's not woke, it's still pretty hard to get. I don't know. It still indicates a certain level of intelligence, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't
Even
know.
today, I think. Even today, probably it does.
I don't know, Joy Reid or whatever.
She didn't graduate from Harvard Law, though.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So he's not an everyman, but he talks like one, which leads me to believe he's very politically savvy. Because one of the biggest flaws of intelligent people, and I count myself in this group, is we want people to know that we're intelligent. And we talk as if that's one of our primary goals.
Hmm.
We don't dumb down our speech very often because it feeds our ego to have people understand that we're intelligent, just a little bit more intelligent than everybody else. We like that. It feeds the ego. But this is a flaw. If you're a politically savvy person, it's a really dumb thing to do to try to seem smarter than other people around you. It's immensely stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you want to be a successful politician. And I feel like Ron DeSantis has sort of dumbed down and created this everyman persona in order to win at politics, which indicates that he's self-aware, which indicates that he's smart about how to do this. I don't think most people, even intelligent people, have that ability. I don't think Trump has that ability. I don't think he'll, be introspective and say, "Oh, how does this sound? Maybe I shouldn't say this because it's not necessarily helping me." No, he'll just say what he wants and how he wants to say it because that's what he feels at the time. That's not how DeSantis operates. He will be smart about it.
Scott Adams thinks that Trump is a master persuader. Do you think, if that is in fact true, do you think it just comes naturally to him?
I think
Or
it comes naturally. I think it's like he's got the salesman in him.
Okay.
If you look at when he was young, when he was in his 40s or even in his 50s, he was just a businessman, right? And when he talk about his business, and he's very persuasive, he's very charismatic, he's very compelling. But it's just a natural thing. It's not this very deliberate, intentional thing that he's doing. I don't think that's the case. Like Fetterman is an everyman even before he got brain damage. When he didn't have it, he was the everyman, right? And that was why he was popular. People did actually like him in Pennsylvania. He was seen as authentic. He was seen as of the people. And I'll give that to him. DeSantis is not that person. He was a successful athlete who was smart enough to go to Harvard Law. He's not like you and me. That's not the case at all. And yet he's crafted very deliberately this persona that will leave the average person to believe that, oh, this guy's he's using plain language. He's just a regular person. He's speaking common sense. I could vote for this guy. Nobody wants to vote for a guy who's trying to tell you he's smarter than you. That's not going to engender much love, okay? So the people who do that, and I throw myself in this category. I throw most smart people in this category. I throw people like Ted Cruz in this category, right?
I definitely put Ted Cruz, but I was going to say Elon Musk, I would say is not in that category.
No, he's not in that category, but he's obviously clearly intelligent. But the thing is, I think that he doesn't often sound super intelligent because he's kind of like an autist. He has like a personality problem. I think that's really why. I don't think he's intentionally dumbing himself down. Let's just put it that way. He's got this awkward personality that seems more relatable, but I do not think it's intentional. I think that's just his personality. I believe if you spoke to him one-on-one, that's also the way he'd be. Whereas I think if you spoke to Ron DeSantis one-on-one, you would think, oh, this guy sounds a lot smarter. It sounds like a guy from Harvard Law,
Yeah, who is this guy?
Right. But when he speaks to the voters of Florida, he sounds like your plumber. Big difference, but it's intentional. It's totally intentional. And because of that, there is a drawback to that, though, which is if he's not good at it, if he's not on 100% of the time, it can feel inauthentic, perhaps. But if you're really good at it, then it's authentic,
Yeah, nowhere near as bad as probably like Hillary Clinton.
No. So if you're not good at it and you try this move, you can be viewed as inauthentic. But if you're good at it, then it doesn't matter because it's just viewed as authentic. Another person going way back who people say something similar of is Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, the way he talked to people just sounds like your grandpa, just sounds like just like a common sense, regular folk kind of guy. But when people talk to him, said when they were in private speaking to him, he didn't sound like that at all. He
Interesting.
sounded much more sharp, intelligent, you know. Um, he just sounded like a different person. So yeah, there was a lot of fakeness to it, but hey, fake wins in politics if you're good enough at it. So I don't fault you for being fake, but you just better be good at it. And I think Ron DeSantis is.
Hmm.
But that's one thing Trump has going for him. He's never fake. That's also bad because he's never fake.